vast deserts. Hidden away within the rocks of these deserts are a people known as the Fremen, who have long held a prophecy that a man would come, a Messiah, who would lead them to true freedom. The planet is Arrakis, also known as DUNE.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Igloo, and today we're going to be talking about DUNE the game, another open world survival type coming from Funcom, and we're going to be getting right into it. So, for what I've known is that I can pretty much say that I became a very devout fan of Conan Exiles and pretty much all of its iterations. And for what I've seen and for what I've done in Conan Exiles was that I pretty much played the game religiously to the point. And I know about the limitations that they have, especially with the studio as well as everything else. And this is just some of my ideas for what DUNE, the game in 2020, would be. Okay, so first of all, there's going to be a movie coming out called The Dune. If you don't know the cult classic, it is from 1980s, okay? The actual date is 1984, Dune. And it became a cult classic because it offered something where you would need to have control of the spice. Spice is pretty much what can transcend like space to go to different areas. It elevated the mind and getting everything else done. Now, they also made comics with this as well, and they have like literal encyclopedias of this. But just getting enough information just so I can understand the precipice of like the lore of this and the actual genre, I would like to be able to put a few thoughts in people's minds when it comes to this. One, we're going to be probably on the planet of Dune, okay? This actually offers the most variety for what Funcom Animations is able to achieve when it comes to most of their process. The reason why is that their predecessor, Conan Exiles, an open world survival game that I've covered many times before, has mainly been a desert environment initially. And this also goes into the scope that can be also lured onto the realm of magic. So the witch doctors that are in this, or the actual precedence beings, that they can manipulate people with their voice so that they can almost to the point mind control them to a limited extent for 1 to 2 people in that kind of regard. But the savior in the movie in 1984's Dune, which is Paul, okay, he was able to achieve the impossible and to control the voice without having a throttle and to get everything else done at the end of the movie, and then putting the Emperor at his knees on a prison planet of his own, making Dune the middle of the universe, again, on top of everything else. There's a lot of lore, and I'm probably not doing the whole story's justice when it comes to this, but we're going to go on to the technical side. So what I think that Funcom has the idea of is that we're going to be on the world of Dune, like I said a little bit earlier. But for what we were actually discovering on top of other things is that we're going to be most likely on the Unreal Engine 4 and the most recent version that they have updated in their forms, because they are really okay and proficient with Unreal Engine 4. What I'm going to see is that they're going to apply all the changes and fixes when it came to Conan Exiles, okay? Because it's pretty much been a learning curve to everything else. But again, I can't have every type of hope, because most of this time that this game will come at the same time the movie will come out in 2020. So normally when there's a movie as well as a game company coming out at the same time, it's not really the best of ideas because they don't really jive well. But I do wish the best for the actual dev community when it comes to this type of game, because it's going to be very intricate, especially if they're going to be working for that. So if you guys ever watch the movie, there's giant ass like worms or whatever you want to call it that eat spice. Spice, again, is pretty much the main precious material in the world that is only anywhere else in the universe. And again, you're going to have to be able to ride these things and get everything else done. So instead of like small animal dynamics, you're going to be having gigantic worms. And there's only going to be strongholds. Now, these strongholds are going to be from the mountains. Now, what I would personally like to see in this kind of setting is that you have the whole planet of Dune, okay? And most of it is going to be sand, okay? You're going to be able to survive in a exosuit, even though it's going to be around like 350 Kelvin. For Fahrenheit, it would be around 170-ish degrees when it comes to that. Yeah. And when you're able to go through most of this kind of setup, like, you're going to be seeing a wide variety of differences. Now, again, the planet itself is completely desert, okay? This is what matters to the most pertinent to the story. And there's little aquifers that are everywhere scattered along the planet. Now, what Paul did in the movie is that he took to the natives and taught them how to fight. And he taught them how to fight with sound. So, in order for you to fight against laser weapons that are in the game, you would use your voice. So you would be using the voice to manipulate not only people, but also things and other environments that are around, using your voice as a weapon and as a tool in order for you to achieve victory. Now, they also have a lot of melee combat. Now, I would assume that we would be having the traditional knives that were actually in the Dune series, probably some spears, some halibuts, and a few other things in combination. And you're probably going to swap between like armor sets when it comes to this. The reason why I say swapping between armor sets is that you have multitudes of different people that are pretty much there as like their environment, and some actually have to have a full suit in order for them to survive on another planet, because their climate is completely different and their air composition makeup is completely different. So you might be seeing a mixture of multitudes when it comes to enemies that are out there, when it comes to having a very open world survival development when it comes to this. And it only makes sense that it would only be on the world of Dune instead of different environments, because again, I don't think Funcom has the technical prowess to have one world, 2 worlds, 3 worlds, 4 worlds in order for them to evolve their story and their narrative in an open world survival game. It makes the most sense when it comes to either a map or also at the same time an entire planet, but most of the planet encapsulated with just sand and desert for what that would be. And then at the same time, you can have different events that would come up as well. Now, on top of everything else that I said, I want that there would be different levels of stability. Now, the current problem in Conan Exiles is buildable stability. And what this also extrapolates to is that in these Dune Mountain castles, because they're built within the environments, they can actually control this level of stability compared to, let's say, other tribes. So you are having other people that are trying to make different things, but no one is safe against the worms if you build out in the open, because the worms are like 400 kilometers long at times, and small ones are like 100 kilometers long. Everything could be destroyed if it was in the open. So it gives a reason for global events to happen that would wipe out a main majority of bases besides the ones that are in the mountainside on top of everything else. Also, one of the bigger issues in Conan Exiles was that you just had so much stuff built anywhere that it just caused the server to chug. And also at the same time, for those servers, that you would only be having them mainly used on one thread. Even on private servers that I personally ran in the past, where it was only dedicated to one thread processes, even for private servers based on the software encoding of the engine. So, getting more into that, we want to make sure that we have something that is going to be ambiguous to the environment. Now, you can't have something that is going to be just vast swaths of land. Now, riding a worm on the back that's 400 kilometers long, it's a pretty tall order. And you might be needing them to raid or do something in particular instead of just using your voice and a charge meter on top of everything else, because again, this is an open world survival. You're going to have different mechanics and explosives in order for you to get through, because this is not gods you're going to be replacing gods with worms in this kind of retrospect, except for instead of summoning a worm and a few other things. In order for you to summon a worm, you actually have to set up a tempo that would be constant and rhythmic at the same time, because they're attracted to the sound, just like the Tremors were from Tremors 1, 2, and 3 movie series. But because you're going to be riding on a gigantic ass worm, you're probably going to be using that for raids, and people are going to be having these world event dynamics, especially when it comes to it. Now, probably what I can say is that there's going to be a cinematic or something like that where it's going to take like 2 to 3 hours to tame a worm, because if you are having something that is 100 to 400 kilometers in length and they can pretty much level most of their environments, it's not going to be cool for most people that are going to be big tribes that are going to have different things. Now, also in this world, there's different vehicles, modes, and environments. You have extractors of spice. Now, spice is going to be one of the bigger things that are going to be in this open world survival game when it comes to this as well. And my hypothesis when it comes to this is that it's going to be used to boost a character like in its entirety, because spice is going to make you stronger. It's going to make you faster, or it's going to do something different. There's probably going to be different elixirs when it comes to this. Conan Exiles also did this with elixir of strength, elixir of health, and a few other things, mainly offering difference of +3 in the special attributes. But I would say that it would be a little bit more different when it comes to it. I don't see that there's going to be a lot of space travel, even though in the original movie series, as well as the very extended books and comics of this, which it's unbelievable on how much lore there is. I think there's more lore to this than there is Star Trek movie series in different regards. And you guys can argue in the comments, but there's a lot to this, and there's a lot of people that have tried to put their spin to this and they've failed when it comes to a lot of movie series, and that's why there's literally, just like in Conan Exiles, there's a cult following to this. So as soon as we figure that, you have the water of life, okay, and this is so that the mother can actually put like new knowledge into that. Now, what I would say is that if there is a mother that is going to be all-seeing and knowing, is that they would be like one per base or something in that regard. Because if you're going to be incorporating things that are from the lore into a game, you're going to need to be putting at least the mother in there, as well as Paul in some way. Because Paul is like equivalent to Conan in this regard, because he's the savior of the people. And it's just unbelievable that this can be done in this regard. And even the strongest rocks cannot be done unless they use their voice. And again, this is one of the bigger things that is going to be coming down to, and this is my prediction to almost all of the open world survival. First, it's going to need to at least be the whole entire world, okay? Because having a map is not going to do its due diligence. They talk about the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere being forbidden, and most of the equilateral of most of the planet is accessible to mining. Now, the reason why they call that forbidden is that's where most of the people are able to go there, and also where the biggest worms are. So that's why they call it forbidden, because of that own precedence. So also, you're going to be having mainly one environment and then subterranean environments that have water. And you're going to be having, let's say, if you need the water of life, you're going to have to kill one of these baby worms, and then you're going to need to drink it. And capturing these worms are going to be extremely difficult, because you're going to have to get the offspring from 100 or 400 kilometer in length one. And there's a lot of violence in this. There's a lot of genocide in this. So I don't know how they're going to be spinning all this to make it so that it is like rated M to today's standard. I can see a lot of news journalists freaking out about this series, but I personally took the time to watch the movies, to understand some of the lore to a degree, and then I wanted to take Funcom's capabilities for what they have based on the products that they currently are offering. Any open world survival needs to be better than 40 players that they had for Conan Exiles. Period. the engine can handle at least 100 people. And since that in this world of Dune, there's going to be less NPCs, and it's going to be very, very ambiguously big, okay? There's going to be a lot of story. It depends on how they tell their story when it comes to this whole open world survival, that it's going to be very present. Because if they don't incorporate Paul in some way, shape, or form, it's going to be crazy. And again, I just watched the whole video and the movie of it, and I just wanted to be more immersed into this than my other experiences with Conan Exiles and also Fallout 76. Because with Fallout 76, I was a fanboy of that as well, because I was able to get everything else done. I was able to make sure that we are able to understand it. I played Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout 4 VR, but open world survival games are my jam, and I love it. So what you guys think of my theory about how it's going to be laid out, how the environment is going to be? Because personally, that would be the best way to really bring a lot of technical prowess when it comes to the IP of Dune. Have a good one, guys.